The first year that Photopass shot Mickey's Not So Scary Party, we had a lot of learning to do. I was privileged to come into Photopass shortly after it had expanded to all 4 of the main Walt Disney World parks. And as part of that, we were still taking over new areas, we were still learning new things, we were still doing a lot of brand new things. One of the very first ones was the Mickey's Not So Scary Party in October. We had a lot of learning to do with that. As just a photographer, I didn't have a lot to do with the planning of it. But I definitely gleaned a lot of what had happened, just simply because I was one of the first photographers to be able to shoot the parties. I didn't get to shoot that many that first year, but I was in on the first 2, 3, or 4 of them or so. We had a lot of different things that we tried. We knew that Photopass was starting to gain in popularity, but there was definitely still some early concern over whether it was going to be successful at the parties. Were we going to have enough photographers, or were we going to have too many photographers? It was also early in the process of creating magic shots, and so we really didn't have very many magic shots. In fact, I think the only one we might have had that first year was just the carriage outside Haunted Mansion and letting the ghost show up there. I don't think we even did Hitchhiking Ghosts until a couple years later, and a lot of those others came in much later. So really what we had for Not So Scary was we had our regular castle night shots, but then we added in a number of other characters that were there just for the Not So Scary Party. We had a lot of creativity that we were trying, including shooting some locations that we normally would not shoot, trying a few different things with the lighting on the cameras, and seeing what would work and what didn't. As an example, one of the places that we shot for those first Not So Scary Parties was actually the Haunted Mansion itself. This was not a location that we usually shot, because it's a hard one to set up just because of the way the walkways are and how hard it is to see the mansion, as well as just a kind of an out-of-the-way spot. But we thought hey, the party? People are after this. Let's try it. So that was the first year that we actually shot the Haunted Mansion itself as a picture. And that was actually one of the locations I got to shoot my first couple parties. I actually bounced in Liberty Square between the Haunted Mansion and then going over to what we called the Liberty Square Bridge, which there's the bridge that comes from the Castle Hub area right on over into Liberty Square, and a nice little alcove there where you can shoot a really nice shot of the castle. And that's kind of where I was bouncing between those 2 locations and trying them out. It was a really neat location. There were a lot of people coming by, just simply because, Not So Scary, the Haunted Mansion's a big, huge, popular attraction. So we were able to get a lot of pictures. I was actually able to watch them do the magic shots of the horseless carriage, and that was really kind of neat to be able to watch that. And just watching all the costumes and seeing the way guests were interacting, it was just a ton of fun. However, those locations ended up with a couple of big drawbacks as well, and that really became apparent when it became time for the parade. Now, our managers were bouncing around all over the place trying to make sure that everybody was covered. We actually did tag teaming, which is something we normally didn't do, in that we would have a photographer with the camera on the tripod, and they would be shooting the pictures, but then we had another photographer with a lot of them that was kind of keeping the line organized, watching the traffic, making sure nobody tripped over the tripods, and getting everything organized for us. It allowed us to have a second person to kind of cover our backs as we were working, or if something happened, say you really had to go, you had somebody who could step over for you real quick while you ran off stage and filled up your water bottle, or unloaded your water bottle, or something like that. So that was really nice. But once the parade crowd started to fill in there, we couldn't really shoot the Liberty Square Bridge, because that was a place that people wanted to stand to watch the parade. And we couldn't really shoot the angle we were at over by the Haunted Mansion, because people were starting to fill in that location as well. And so we were kind of standing there in these crowded spots, not able to shoot. And at that point, our manager came around and said, okay, guys, grab your gear, let's go. And so we actually ended up with this group of like 8 or 9 photographers and the manager. And again, just because of the crowds and the side of the street that we were on, we all ended up on the side by the Haunted Mansion, not too far off of the Hall of Presidents. There was a little opening there, and so we ended up with this pocket of photographers. And half of us had cameras around our necks. The other half were standing there with tripods. So you had a bunch of us that were kind of standing like this, trying to squeeze out of the way of the crowd for the parade. Now, normally we would have stepped off stage completely. We would have gone down to the utilidors, taken a break. But the manager said, "Hey, would you actually like to watch the parade?" Duh! Of course we would! They actually allowed us to stay on stage in a group of cast members together to watch the parade. Now, we were behind all of the guests because as cast members we were not going to take a guest spot. But we had a little bit of a raised area, so there were a couple of us kind of standing up on tiptoes, and I will never forget that first glimpse of the Headless Horseman. Now, I had never been to a not-so-scary party at all, as a guest, let alone as a cast member. So I had never seen the parade. YouTube was still kind of new, but really, there wasn't a place to go watch the parade at this point in time. So I was really excited. I will never forget that experience when the Headless Horseman came racing down the street. Now, today, the Headless Horsemen walk. It's barely more than a trot, and they just kind of take their time and wander around, and it's still a very neat effect. It's still a great opening to the parade. But that's not what they used to do. Back then, the Headless Horseman would charge. He was a full-on run all the way through the park. Now, here's kind of the secret to it a little bit. The Headless Horseman himself could not see. I don't know if that has changed or not, but they couldn't see where they were going. They really could not control the horse. Their eyes were completely covered up, and so those horses were trained to be able to run that route, to know where to go, to know how to get there. There were other cast members that could step in as kind of handlers who could catch the horse, slow him down, so when they crossed over, say, the Liberty Square Bridge and there was a turn there, they could slow him down a little bit to make sure that he went where he was supposed to go and not get injured. But this horse charged, and I still remember this group of photographer cast members all standing there watching as he came down the street, charging right past us, and all of us standing up and screaming, "Yeah!" We were a bunch of goobers, we really were. But it was such a neat, exciting moment. Now, sadly, the Horseman doesn't get to do that anymore. They've slowed them down because there were a couple times that apparently the horse slipped on wet pavement or something and fell. And I heard, have not been able to confirm, that some guests not paying attention at one point crossed the street in front of one of the horses. So, unfortunately, now they walk. They don't get to charge like that anymore. But it was such a really cool moment to experience that with other friends I was working with. And then we got to stand there and wait and watch the whole Boo to You parade as it went by. Again, as cast members, but surrounded by guests. We had an absolute ball watching it. And I remember playing and chatting with some of the guests around us, and I think we were probably more excited for it than some of them were. But just a really neat moment. And then after all of that, going back, setting up again, and shooting more photos. I remember sitting down with some of the trainers and managers afterwards and looking over the photos we were shooting and evaluating how well did this location work, how well did those pictures work. And I actually talked with a couple of them, just even evaluating the locations we were at, with the Haunted Mansion. How well did that work? Did traffic flow? Were you getting a lot of pictures? Did you felt like it was successful? Were people excited? Even talking about other locations and things to try. I actually remember one little group where we were talking about the magic shots and how cool was the horseless carriage, and then trying to figure out what else we could do. It was actually really kind of neat to go last October and see a couple of the magic shots that we had actually talked about way back in 2006, and actually seeing them becoming reality, like having the magic shot with the Headless Horseman in it. I remember talking about doing something like that, and now here it is. So that was really neat to be able to see some of those. I also like the fact that they took some of the other ideas that we had for even just the signs during the parades and things like that, and they've kind of grown that, because that also was a brainstorming idea we had back then. Hey, we've got this parade time, what can we do? And especially with the parties, because it's such a special time, you want to be able to do something a little bit extra. And they came up with some extra things, including stuff like these signs at the last Not So Scary I went to. So it was fun to know that I was part of that very early process. one of my big regrets is outside of those first early parties, I didn't get to really work anymore after that. They ended up doing this deal where you had to be trained or at least specifically scheduled for it. And because of my schedule and my park assignments, I wasn't part of that little group. And even though I technically could shoot it, I didn't get scheduled for them after that. It wasn't too long afterwards that I had bumped over to Hollywood Studios, and so I was no longer officially a Magic Kingdom cast member, which meant I didn't get scheduled for those. And that was kind of too bad, because I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed shooting the Not So Scary, I enjoyed shooting the Pirates and Princess. That was a party I really wish that we had kept up more, but it didn't go as well as I wanted, and so it disappeared. But it was just a really neat time. And such a neat deal to look at what they're doing now and see how it's grown, how it's expanded, and how much more they're doing. And to know that, there was a point where I was a part of that process to help create that. So, did you like this look at Not So Scary? Have you gotten Photopass pictures at Not So Scary? And what do you think? Did you like them? Is there something else you wish they would do? I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Please don't forget to like and share the video. Let me know your suggestions too. I would love to hear from you. If you want to know about fan pages and places to contact me and merchandise and stuff, check the description. There's a ton of info there. Thank you as well to my patrons for supporting me. Y'all rock, and I couldn't do this without you. If you want to know more about Patreon, there's a link below too, as well as at the end of the video. Thank you so very much for watching, and God bless. The first year that Photopass shot the but I definitely gleaned a whole bunch, especially since I got to shoot for and then we had a little bit of creativity that we were trying to do, and shooting some places we normally might not. Normally? What's a normally? And that was a little bit. If you'd like to know about my merchandise, fan pages, and more, be sure to check the description below. If you'd like to know whenever I've got a new video posted, well, make sure you hit that button right up there and subscribe. If you'd like to watch another one of my videos, I've got a great one for you right here. And if you'd like to be like these wonderful people here and support me financially on Patreon, well, make sure you check the link right there. There's even some extra perks for them. Thank you so much, and God bless.